This is the second part of the oral history of Iranian people's defeated revolution. Last time we explained how the People's Revolution was defeated and the Islamists took power, and this time our focus is on women's movement. The Islamic government started to oppress the revolution by attacking women's rights. Enforcement of hijab and other Islamic laws on women and the general public, cancellation of the family law preventing men from having several wives, all these acts initiated immediately after the government grabbed the power in February of 1979. And for the last 30 years, how Iranian women obey the Islamic dress code indicates the level of regime's control over the whole society. So how women resisted against the enforcement of hijab and other Islamic laws? Women demonstrated in Tehran against the newly imposed Islamic laws in March of 1979. This was the first International Women's Day ever celebrated in Iran in such a large scale. Nurses, students, teachers, government employees, and workers of the oil industry were the main participants in these demonstrations. And of course, the Islamic regime organized its forces and attacked the demonstrators. I mentioned that this was the first International Women's Day because during the time of the monarchies, March 8th was not allowed to be celebrated, and they had a Women's Day, which was the Shah's mother's birthday. The slogan in this picture in front of the woman says, "In the dawn of freedom, women's right is absent." Here I explain the chronology of enforcing Islamic laws around March of 1979. On February 11, army surrendered, and on February 26, just 2 weeks later, Ayatollah Khomeini's office bans the family protection law that restricted polygamy for Muslim men. And saying it restricted because polygamy during the time of the Shah still existed in Iranian society, and the family protection law only limited. They asked for the first wife to allow for other wives to come up to 4. So Islamic laws were indeed practiced by Iranian law even before Islamists took to power. But on March 3rd, women were banned from being judges and holding similar occupation in Ministry of Justice. On March 4th, Khomeini declares that divorce is one of exclusive rights of men. He says this declaration in front of a group of women who had gone to his residence to meet with him as the new leader of Iran. On March 7, Khomeini orders that women employed in government offices must wear hijab. And that was the part that made women very angry and resistant. March 8 to 12, thousands of women demonstrate in protest and rally in various locations, including University of Tehran and Ministry of Justice. On March 10 to 12, women in major cities, Shiraz, Isfahan, Tabriz, and Sanandaj demonstrate against the newly imposed laws. And next, we're going to have a film that was made by 4 French women from a group called Movement for Emancipation of Women. They came to Tehran during that time and followed women's demonstration. There's also a short interview with Kate Millett, who's a very famous American women's rights activist, and she came to Tehran to speak for the for the demonstration, March 8th demonstration, but shortly after she was arrested and kept in detention for 3 days and then deported from Iran, and the government arrested Kate Millett. Here we're going to see the documentary film of women's demonstration, and for that you have to go to the link that you see here. This film was made by Movement for Women's Liberation, and there is a short interview around the end of this film with Kate Millett, who was present at the march. She was there in Tehran, but was soon afterwards arrested by the Iranian police, detained for 3 days, and deported. Kate Millett is the author of Sexual Politics and Going to Iran. And after you see the movie, you can come back to this presentation and see the rest of the history.